Bonnie Bennet. It's no secret that Bonnie Bennet was one of the most mistreated characters on the Vampire Diaries show. Now, as everybody knows, there were 2 spin-offs of the Vampire Diaries, the originals and Legacies. I watched all of them. The originals will always have a special place in my heart, but the truth is that there were more people of color in the show, but the ones with recurring roles were black men. They played the characters Marcel and Vincent, but as for a recurring black woman, they were far to none. Besides this being an obvious problem, this is also a problem because of the controversy that ensued after Kat Graham revealed everything that she went through on set. This was further confirmed by multiple interview clips, but the final nail in the coffin was Julie Plex's tweet about how she viewed black women, which really shed a huge light as to why Bonnie Bennet got some of the worst storylines on the Vampire Diaries. Ever since Bonnie Bennet, the remainder black women on screen in the TVD universe were killed off, or they were just side characters that used to do the dirty work for vampires and other characters. But it wasn't until Legacies that we saw a recurring black woman that graced my screen, called Cleo Sowande, played by the lovely Omono Okoje. And that's when I realized that Cleo was the CW's and the TVD's writers' attempt to fix the Bonnie Bennet problem. To understand why I say this, I wanted to compare both Bonnie Bennet and Cleo's entrances into the TVD universe, and by extension, the Legacies universe. But also, to do that, we first have to understand why Bonnie Bennet's character went through so much, and the main points and the main problems that Bonnie Bennet as a character faced, and also Kat Graham as a person faced. Now, of course, there are multiple videos on this on the internet, some made by some of my favorite creators, including Khadija. She also made a YouTube video about Julie Plex's tweet, so go check that out for more depth. But I'm basically going to shorten the points into 6 main points. In order to make this video not an hour long, I'm going to run through the main points that were made. Number 1, Bonnie got the worst storyline in the Vampire Diaries. She had to be the savior for people who didn't even care about her or noticed that she was a ghost for 1 whole season. Yeah, that actually happened. Okay. Number 2, Bonnie was the token black girl character, even though she was biracial. Yeah, yet the writers really considered this decision to cast her as diverse at the time, which speaks volumes, but we'll get into that later. Number 3, Bonnie's love interests were shoddy until Enzo, and then Enzo was killed, unlike the other love interests of the other main characters who were revived to literally no end. Bonnie doesn't get that permanent happiness that everybody else enjoys, just robbing Bonnie of more than her deserved loved interest. Number 4, Bonnie and Damon should have been together, and that would have been a way better storyline. No offense to the Delena shippers, I'm so sorry, but this is actually something that a lot of the fandom really wanted, and Ian Somerhalder himself wanted. And yet for some reason, to the TVD writers, that was something that they simply couldn't comprehend. I mean, literally, everyone does crap on Julie Plec for a bunch of the decisions, but I would like to bring to everyone's attention that there were other writers on this TV show, and specifically this woman called Caroline Dries, who also wrote a significant number of episodes herself. And in this interview, she simply couldn't fathom why Bonnie and Damon should have ended up together.
I don't know, I'm feeling like Damon is still madly in love with Elena. Bonnie's gonna maybe have her own love interest this year, and it's not gonna be Damon, so
I'm open to that, and I know the fans would like to see something like that, but you know, it's their show.
Don't mess with the good thing.
Rock.
They do.
Yeah.
They do
Little
really
Bamon.
rock.
Bonnie and Kai.
Yeah, there's been some really fun stuff. I mean, you know, the show's, there's so much that goes on the show. It evolved after their time in the 90s together.
They're besties now, and it's
They're
she's
besties.
And also, Bonnie, the reason Bonnie's alive is because Elena's...
Which just speaks volumes. I mean, Bonnie is literally discussing the idea, and Caroline is just shutting it down like there's no tomorrow. So even if we want to come for Julie Plec, there are other people in this show and other writers who literally could not comprehend that Bonnie and Damon would be together, even though they had amazing on-screen chemistry. I mean, the way that Caroline just shuts down Bonnie in this scenario really made me upset when the first time I saw this video. She gives it no afterthought, nothing. She doesn't even try and save face in the public and be like, that's an interesting storyline we could actually maybe explore. She just ignores her like that suggestion wasn't even made and just continues onwards. Anyway, number 5, Bonnie's family dies right in front of her, and she wasn't given time to grieve like other characters were. I mean, she literally sees the loves of her life and her family just being destroyed in front of her, and she can do absolutely nothing about it. Whereas other people, including Miss Elena, Miss Girl, got Jeremy's ass. Jeremy's boring ass got revived many times in the show for no reason, even though Bonnie's role was much more important than Jeremy's, but I digress. Number 6 has to do with Kat Graham's treatment on set and how she wasn't allowed to do simple things like wear her natural hair, and she had to wear wigs constantly for years, which destroyed her natural hair and her edges. Even though Kat Graham's hair could have been easily incorporated into the episodes, the writers, the show, they didn't care. Everybody else gets to wear their own hair during the show, and Kat Graham just maybe having shorter, curlier hair was a problem. Yo. And number 7, this was also just shoved in our faces when Julie Plec decided to tweet responding to Megan Thee Stallion's tweet, who she tweeted about Black women being unprotected in the US. And Julie decided to state how she sees Black women as the ones to protect everyone. Why? I don't know. Which is kind of surprising to me, how she's like, Black women are here to save us all, and she expects us to take that as a compliment. You couldn't push for the same biracial woman on your show to be able to have her natural hair out and at least one of your episodes so that her hair wouldn't be destroyed by the amount of wigs that she had to wear. Which, by the way, the wigs sometimes were horrid. I'm not gonna lie to you. Sometimes the wigs gave, but sometimes the wigs were really horrid, and you know Miss Ma'am was struggling on the show for real. Like, yeah, it's just not adding up. It's really giving fake support, no shade, no tea. I don't know Julie Plec as a person, and the worst part is that maybe she might be actually coming from a good place, but if you're saying one thing out on Twitter, or now known as X, and you're not even supporting your own main actress to be able to wear her natural hair in one of your shows just for an episode, is quite disturbing. But I digress. And like I said, I don't want to harp on Julie Plec too much because she is a human being. The problem truly lies within Hollywood, and unfortunately a lot of people in Hollywood are worse, and that's clearly made very evident over the years. But sad to say, at this time in this vampire werewolf phase of the early 2010s, Bonnie Bennet was the most representation we as Black women got, unfortunately. But it wouldn't be until a few years before fans pulled all these aspects together and realized just how Bonnie Bennet was truly wronged beyond belief. Now, after the Vampire Diaries, the originals was created, I mean, the writing was significantly better. In my personal opinion, the writing after season 4 on TVD really just wasn't giving what it's supposed to give. I'm sorry, but it was season 6 and 7 were just crazy, but I digress. It's clear that the originals had significantly better writing, and Marcel and Vincent were going to be the most prolific Black characters on the show. But as for Black women on the show, most again were either witches who died doing dirty work for the originals and were not necessarily recurring characters for any amount of time, besides the storyline of Rebecca inhabiting a biracial woman's body for a while. And that was the most recurring few episodes that we got in the later seasons. But that was also a very weird storyline. And like, it definitely wasn't my favorite simply because it was random, and it also kind of gave me cognitive, it just should we call it cognitive dissonance? I don't know, like it just gave me whiplash. Like I was like, what the hell is happening? But the optics are a little bit strange to say the least. I don't know why they chose that storyline, but I digress. But then came the spin-off Legacies. Now Legacies was a spin-off off the originals, specifically the originals ending following the life of Hope Michelson after Klaus's death. Now the show itself is not like the Vampire Diaries in the sense of like it doesn't have that same like edgy 2000s vibe, but it's very much geared towards Gen Z. I mean, the show has a charm of its own, and even though the writing is more childlike, I still loved Legacies. Like it still kept me entertained. I still really liked it because it had all the aspects of the Vampire Diaries and the originals, but like Gen Z modified. And to be fair, a lot of CW shows do have this weirdness about them, but Legacies is the only one that still kind of stands simply because it has so much history behind it. I will talk more about the writing and the writing of Hope Michelson and Landon as well. Like I had a lot of problems with that storyline, but that's another video for another day. But you can imagine I'm watching the show Legacies and I see this character that walks onto our screen called Cleo Sowande. She's supposed to be a Yoruba woman. That's how that surname is supposed to be pronounced. So the first thing I noticed on the show is that, of course, we have more than just one token Black character, which is amazing. And this time we had MG and Caleb, who had a much better relationship between one another. And then we got the lovely ever Cleo. I will say this right now, Cleo is one of the best characters in the TVD originals Legacies universe, and you cannot tell me anything. Cleo is amazing, and I will talk about her features in just a minute, but it became very, very clear to me as I was watching the show that Cleo is the CW's, and I guess Julie Plex, and I guess all the writers' attempt to fixing what happened with Bonnie Bennet. I think they learned, I think the backlash they received was imminent, and they learned how to represent right. Let me explain. Okay, first of all, she is the only black woman that it's giving like a full recurring role in the show for a long amount of episodes in the TVD universe besides Bonnie Bennet. It was just quite astounding to me. Like, I mean, in the TVD universe, the fact that seeing a black woman is very rare that is recurring on the show is already kind of sad of its own. But I mean, I'm a huge fan of countering negative representation with positive representation. Cleo Sowande comes onto the screen and she's a fully dark-skinned black woman of African descent, specifically of Nigerian descent, and this is actually explored within the show. She's specifically from the tribe of the Yoruba people, and I'll get onto this a little bit later, but that's also something that struck out to me because I am a Nigerian born girl and I do come from a Yoruba family, and I was shooketh, to say the least. Now, the TVD universe has had some exploration with showing black characters and black characters that were African, but the majority of the time they were just comical. I remember the one time in the originals they had Babatunde, which was supposed to be like definitely like a West African man, but my guy was so goofy, I was not taking him seriously, and he also died later, so like, you know, that's that on that, Puriana. The first thing that struck out to me about Cleo was her hair. You can imagine my surprise when I see Cleo rocking locks, I think, or twists in different shapes and forms. I mean, her look actually complements her skin rather than works against it. Her hair looks amazing. I don't know if there was a hairstylist designated to Omona on set, that is her real name, but whoever did her makeup and her outfits deserves an immediate raise. Thank you. Now, I know y'all know I'm a fashion girly, okay? I love Cleo's outfits. I have to say that Cleo's outfits were giving. They gave what it needed to give. They really fall in between the dark academia aesthetic with the fall aesthetic a little, because they focus more on like statement color pieces that complement her skin and her undertones. I mean, that's just the surface level stuff, but I love seeing that in movies and cinematography. So like that to me struck out immediately. But on a deeper level, Cleo is a witch, but she's also a muse, which out of the myriad of characters that have come out of the TVD universe, I mean, we've had like travelers and like just like we've had sirens, we've had the guy from hell. A muse was actually new to me. Like I was surprised as to what that was. Like Legacies itself has a phoenix and the dragon, like y'all, like a muse was new to me. Okay, and then she becomes an oracle. If you know anything about being an oracle or anything about traditional Yoruba history, oracles are actually very existent in Yoruba culture and traditionalism. Now I don't want to like spoil everything because I accidentally did that in my Ugly Betty video and I feel horrible about that and I'm so sorry. But anyway, I was surprised at what Cleo was and the fact that she just did more than just being a witch, because Bonnie Bennet was super powerful and that was very, very evident, but you didn't really get to celebrate that power because a lot of her power had to come from extreme pain of losing people. Like in this situation, Cleo's power does not necessarily come from that, and Cleo didn't get a horrible storyline in this show. I mean, she didn't get the shorthand of the stick. In fact, she gets moments where she gets to be a little bit dubious and actually selfish, because I mean, that is human nature. Like Cleo in the show is not Superwoman. She's great. She's a character, but she also makes mistakes and she also like makes decisions for herself to save her own ass sometimes. She sacrifices herself in place of her grandmother to go off of Malivore and therefore was his prisoner for a long time. Number 3, she also gets romantic interests that don't die. Yes, so she also got a romantic interest in Caleb, and the minute Caleb sees her, like he's smitten with her, he's in love with her, but she's not that into him, and so my man has to fight to get her attention, as he should. Piriana, and therefore their relationship feels more natural. I mean, with Bonnie and Jeremy, I never understood why they were together. I'm so sorry. Now y'all know Bonnie and Enzo for me are endgame, and in my brain I just pretend that Enzo's still alive because fuck the TVD writers for doing that. So sorry, I was so mad when that happened. So I'm really happy that Cleo, as a result, gets a love interest that is still alive, loves her, and doesn't cheat on her with a ghost. You know what I mean? Okay. Before, Cleo's family and heritage. So when Cleo came on the screen, I remember I was watching the episode on a bus after an exam, and I was drinking my vitamin water, as I should, hashtag not sponsored. And Cleo is like, she's coming on, she's doing her thing. But you can imagine my surprise when Cleo casts a spell and Cleo starts speaking Yoruba. Like, girl, I said, wait a damn minute. Am I hearing things? Like, I actually had to rewind because I choked on my drink, y'all. I was so surprised. I'm not kidding. For a long time on the TVD, in the TVD universe, when everyone casts a spell, it's either like in gibberish, it's made up from Julie Plec, or it's based off a few Latin words and the rest is made off of Julie Plec's words. But to hear a word in Yoruba was new. And I thought I was going crazy, y'all. Like, I was like, there's no way this woman is speaking Yoruba on the show. And no, she was. It makes sense because Cleo is of Yoruba origin and she is a Yoruba muse. Of course, it makes sense to have her spells in Yoruba. Now, I do know that the Yoruba spoken in the show sometimes was not the best. And I say this as a woman who's relearning Yoruba herself. Sometimes the Yoruba was not necessarily the clearest or correct. I did see that on a Reddit forum and I thought that was hilarious. But this can also be attributed to the fact that Omona herself is actually an Igbo woman. For my audience who's mainly American, there are many different tribes in Nigeria, right? There are actually around 371 tribal groups as of to date, but the main 5 are Igbo, Hausa, Yoruba, Fulani, and Twi, and there's many, many more. So while Yoruba has a specific way and cadence in how you speak, Igbo is completely different. And it can be understandable that somebody from a completely different tribe might not know the basics. I mean, I'm still trying to learn it myself. However, all in all, I don't really care. I still love the fact that Omona is in this show and she is doing what needs to be done, and that's on that period. I don't really care that she can't speak Yoruba well, but I did notice it on this Reddit forum and I did want to bring it up a little bit because I thought it was funny. But otherwise, this is the kind of representation that I would like to be seeing. This is the kind of representation that is positive representation, and that is why I made this video today. I just wanted to bring this up, that I really think that the CW is finally, after all these years, heading in the right direction with its representation. Unfortunately, with the storylines, that's a different story, but I will be making a video on that soon, and I hope you guys enjoy this video too. Let me know down in the comments if you agree, if you guys see my points as well. Let me know what you guys would like to see me talk about next. Otherwise, in the meantime, thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Okay, bye.